And hey, everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT and Next TMT Talks, this here podcast. I'm here with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, talking about all things technology, media, and telecom. This week, there's a little deal out there that might take a really big step about the time you look at this. We'll get a little bit into the latest hand in the seemingly endless poker game between Netflix and Paramount Skydance. We'll see what cards P-Sky is holding in possibly just hours. We'll actually see what they are. Democratic posturing about the deal, and a cautionary tale from former Sony chief Michael Linton about wanting too badly to be among the cool kids and paying dearly for your insecurities. We'll also look at how other SVOD streaming companies might make the Curiosity Stream tactic and make like Curiosity Stream and harvest millions of dollars for their training data, also known as film and video. Fox Nation finally joins Amazon Prime as its parent company finally gets serious about a post-cable future, while Apple's podcasts get a new face, or at least faces to look at. Meanwhile, back at the company David Ellison already owns, mayhem continues under star hire Barry Weiss after she fails to keep one of her biggest stars at CBS News. AI resistance continues to pop up in the darndest places, and not just over ByteDance's splashy new AI video program, SeedDance 2.0. And finally, will Xbox belong for this world? Big changes at the top at the Microsoft game giant over at Sony's game division. Things really aren't much better after a studio buying splurge the last few years has delivered few actual games. Well, Daniel, let's get into it. We
What?
are maybe on the cusp. We're on the cusp, right? Something.
So much happens in this issue. I mean, the person you start as a reader, the person you were when you start reading, will not be the person you are when you finish.
Transformative. It'll put you through changes. Like to quote David Bowie, changes.
So where do we start? What's the big? I guess it's the big deal that
It's the big deal. All we can do is set the table because we actually don't know what cards Paramount Skydance is going to put down. Ted Sarandos and the kids at Netflix called their bluff. There'd been a lot of talking, a lot of smack talk, a lot of, well, we could do this, we could do that. And they made them put their cards down. They said, we'll give you a week, show your hand. We'll go from there. What are you thinking they're going to do?
32 a share.
You're calling 32. They're going to actually, but that puts it up in around what, $112 billion, something like that. Oh. That's a lot of money. Let me just throw this out there. Big picture. That's a lot of money to pay at a time when AI is sending the cost of content production plummeting. Hollywood didn't want to hear it.
Ellison said his dad has an ultimate set of tools.
Yeah. Somebody said Larry Ellison's an ultimate tool. I can't believe that. Yeah.
Tried to sue Forrest Whitaker in Fast Times.
Yeah, right. They really want it. They really want it. They really may need to have it. I mean, it sort of makes you wonder what the reasoning was for Ellison to buy Paramount.
Well, this is last and final offer, right? And if
Warner Brothers last and best, yeah.
Right. If Warner Brothers believes that 32 is your best offer, and you're kind of compelled to give your best offer and you really want it, what is stopping that from happening besides the arduous debt that will result from it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I still go back to that, Sarandos is saying, look, if you look at their numbers and their goal, it's not that they need to cut 6 billion more. It's they need to cut 16 billion more. And that's before you bump it up another couple of bucks a share, another 8 billion, 6 billion, whatever it is. That presumably would not be cash, but come from somewhere, probably debt. This is a gigantic leveraged buyout, the biggest in history. And fine, that's a way to do business, though it typically means gigantic cuts. And one of the things we mentioned in passing in the newsletter, Jim Cameron says, Paramount Skydance should get this because Netflix is monopolistic and da-da-da. Cameron just hates Netflix in particular and streaming in general. So maybe all his stuff is a little colored by that.
A little reaction there, and I kind of understand it. They're not among us. They came from someplace else.
Right. But the flip side of that, I mean, Mark Ruffalo comes out, not the maker of billion-dollar films, but fine actor and a thoughtful guy. And he says, look, it's not like Paramount's better. I mean, if you want Paramount, what about whatever however many billions they need, a monopolistic power. It's going to shrink the number of studios. It's going to shrink the number of jobs available by a lot, getting to even with 9 billion, 10 billion, 11 billion, whatever that number is, it's a big number out of companies that have gone through rounds of cuts for a while now.
I guess 10 years ago, I would understand Cameron's impulse, but
Right.
so much has changed. So much DNA from Hollywood is now in Netflix. They've hired so many people on the creative side, and they've proven they've got a model. They're making lots of money, and it comes from someplace else. But that's what success looks like these days, and going forward. It's a more vibrant future, I think, for the entire business than what Paramount has to offer. Care about democracy and politics with how subsumed and obedient they seem right now. It's disturbing.
Well, we'll see how that goes. As you mentioned, Laura Loomer, the loony Laura Loomer, the curiously close advisor to the president and the president both hopped on Truth Social, their favorite outlet, to say that there would be consequences. Trump apparently told Sarandos that what he cares about, he didn't have a dog in the hunt. All he cared about was protecting jobs in Hollywood because his business has been sapped. I love that he's thinking that way. That's fantastic. Except one job, that of the member of the board of directors, Susan Rice, Barack Obama's former chief of staff, is still a very influential
She was in
Democrat.
the Biden cabinet too. And she
Yeah.
was on a podcast this week talking about universities and law firms and other institutions who have, quote, bent the knee to Trump and how that's going to come back to bite them. And it's not
There would be consequences the other way, is what she was saying.
right. And Loomer, whose background, I think, befuddles us all, she's just a social influencer, brought it to Trump's attention. He said that Netflix is going to pay the consequences if they keep Rice on the board. So to me, this is the first time that Netflix, a lot has been said about their the tight wire they have to walk. But this is the first time they have to make a choice. Do they stand their ground and keep her on the board? I kind of think they do. These are smart guys that know the long view. I have trouble seeing them reacting complicitly to that.
Yeah, they can count till November when things might get a little more complicated
It's a
for
shitty
just
position.
shoving things
No doubt
through.
about it. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a tough one. I spent a little time in the newsletter, and I think this is useful. Whatever number comes out, Michael Linton has a new memoir coming out, and an excerpt appeared in the Wall Street Journal about the most momentous moment in his time as CEO of Sony Pictures Entertainment. And Linton was a solid guy. He came from, but he was kind of an outsider. He didn't, he talks about it being in Scarsdale, which is not exactly outsider stuff. But then his family moves to Holland when he's like a 9-year-old. He totally doesn't fit in with the Dutch kids and all this stuff. And he's trying so hard to fit in and all that. He's got these insecurities. He ends up through a very circuitous path, ending up atop Sony. But he says, even though my family has access to great restaurants and all this stuff, there's just another velvet rope beyond the one I've got, and that's for the actors because they're the real cool kids. I remember going up and talking to like some of the big names like George Clooney and some other folks, and they were very polite, but it was clear he was just a suit. So he gets a chance to bid on a movie from Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen again. He'd had several of these things with bidding wars with Universal, where sometimes Universal won, sometimes they won, but they were pretty heated and they got kind of really into this stuff. And every time Seth would do something even more outrageous, and they go, I can't do that. And Universal would get it, and then they would like make a bunch of money. It would be a hit. So here's this one called The Interview, wherein two schmucky journalists, don't know where they got that stereotype from, go over to North Korea and
Saw it on a United flight one time.
yeah, they assassinate Kim Jong-un, who it turns out was not laughing when he heard about this. They eventually forced Sony to release this thing on YouTube with payment structure through Stripe because the theaters were too scared. They didn't want anything to happen in their theaters, etc. But they went ahead. He wanted to be the cool guy, wanted to do this thing, went ahead, put it out there. A little bit later, he's getting up in the morning, going into work, gets a call from his CFO saying nothing is working. Turns out they got strip mined. Every digital asset they had, all of it wiped out. Movies in production and editing, marketing materials, archives, emails, and all of it got put online by presumably North Korean hackers.
No, Kim Jong-un pronounce it. Kim Jong. It's been a while.
Kim Jong
Kim
Kim
Jong Un.
Jong Un. Kim
Right.
Jong Un.
He's a great guy, according to Trump.
Well, sometimes when he wants to build a resort on one of the North Korean beaches.
So yeah, I did read that excerpt from Linton's book. I guess he co-wrote it with who was it? Also talked about how insecurity led him to say,
Yeah, insecurity led him to do this stuff. And my point is, he bids too much for something he shouldn't have done. He has a table read. The table read's really cool, and he wants to be like they're having
right.
a great time. The table read's really cool. It's like, okay, let's do this. And Amy Pascal, who's like semi number 2-ish, the former head of the studio, said, let's do this. So they're going to go do this, and not really thinking what might happen. And what happened was the most disastrous hack, most expensive hack in the history, not just of Hollywood, but probably in Western civilization. And I remember being at Deadline at that time and having editors go, well, why are my emails to PR people
Or why
available
the
online?
namely horse trading that they were engaged in. And
Yeah, it was like, because they would do things like, okay, we'll run 3 of your crappy little, third tier casting memos in exchange for a big break on a bigger name, or somebody's going to be named like vice president of home entertainment or whatever, something bigger, right? And they'd be doing this stuff, and that was greasy, as what I called it. But the other one that was more problematic were things like the very interesting conversations between Amy Pascal and Scott Rudin, who, you can't spell Rude without Rudin. Scott Rudin, the big producer, and Angelina Jolie, who wanted to do a remake of the most disastrous film in Hollywood history, Cleopatra. She wanted to do a remake. So technically they could do better. But remember, Cleopatra was the film in dollars adjusted that forced Fox to sell off most of its lot into what became Century City, because it was broke. It lost so much money on this over-the-top spectacle with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. So anyway,
probably cost an arm and a leg.
It cost $3 million back when that was real money. So
this whole story, how you want to fit in the cool kid actors thing.
Yeah,
and it might be my perspective being a lifelong Angelino that I'm not going to say I'm immune to it, because there are times I've been under the influence of stardom. Scott Hetrick was the editor of Variety. He had this kind of dipshit publication on the side called DVD Premieres. It was about celebrated direct-to-DVD movies, which the industry couldn't get its head around because, no, you don't understand. We want to go theatrical. This is just the shit we're doing now to do our real job. But I would go to these premieres, and one of them was this sort of frat boyish film starring a very young Ryan Reynolds and his friends. It was directed by Quentin Tarantino's video store buddy, the guy who went to prison for killing some people drunk behind the wheel. What was his name again? Anyway,
don't know.
It was the whole junket was circus, and Reynolds and his friends were kind of obnoxious. They were a little drunk in the morning, and myself and another reporter kind of rolling our eyes. Right. And Reynolds turned to me and goes, "Hey, you know what? We're not for everybody." And I just saw that. I said, you know what? This kid is going to make something of himself.
He did okay. He did okay. He did way better than directed DVD releases ever did. The point I was trying to get to was he did that thing because of his insecurities. And it is possible that right now we have 2 sets of studio executives riddled with insecurities trying to prove that they can make something happen. And somebody is going to make a mistake. Jim Cameron wants no deal to happen with anything, and Warner Bros. Will continue in its merry way. But that's just not how things work, Jimmy. A deal is going to get done. It's going to get sold. So the question is, what's best to me, the thing that's best is you got to take care of shareholders, because that's a fiduciary duty for the board. But what's best for workers and creators and all the folks in Hollywood? And it's hard to see if it's 16 billion in cuts or whatever that number ends up being, that's better for Hollywood than a thriving, much larger company in Netflix that actually knows what it's doing on a global scale might be able to bring to Warner Bros., which I think just, HBO just hit its 112th country of distribution, I think. I can't remember what it was. But it is an interesting time, and Linton's thing is, this is what happens when insecurity drives you to bid too much for something that's just not worth it. And this is a lot of money to spend on something that may not be worth that much. Worth a lot, but maybe not this much. And we'll find out over the next year or two.
There's a guy, David Sanderson. He runs Real Good, which is one of these things you punch in the movie you want to watch and tells you where to stream it. They get a lot of data off that. They make most of their bones by selling research. Anyway, he was on, I forget what podcast, the streaming battles, the streaming wars, something like that. And he was talking sort of graphic. It's in our newsletter, looking at how Warner Brothers dependent Paramount Plus is versus Netflix.
Right.
Paramount Plus's top 10 titles, like 40% license from Warner Brothers. With Netflix, it's zero.
They do well with some of the shows, obviously. Friends is a Warner Brothers show, and they made that relevant to a whole new generation of fans at Netflix. So there's some of their shows. I mean, they obviously have a lot of great stuff. But you're right. It's like none of those things are helping keep Paramount Plus afloat when Landman's not running. Now that being said,
but
yeah, there are
really,
other ways to keep streaming services alive. You enthused about Curiosity Stream. You glommed onto that Laura Martin analyst report about Curiosity Stream making more money, several $1 million, $8 million, 8.3 million or something like that, making more money in a quarter from its AI training deal than it was from its like normal operation.
$7 million in the third quarter for a small niche service like Curiosity Stream. That's a lot of money. It's like nearly half of their revenue, or like 40% of it at least.
Well, there's definitely a way forward if you look at AMC or somebody like that. It's like, where's their money? I mean, it's tough to be a niche. So you've got a library. What do you do with it? Can you make some money off of this stuff? You've got some original programming coming through. It'll be interesting to see what these guys do and where, but it can be a way through. We're going to actually have
Chris Cavill. We'll pronounce his name correctly next week.
I look forward to pronouncing it correctly next week. He's
going to be on the podcast. Versos AI is the name of the company. They're the company that supplied the technology backbone for Curiosity Stream to pull this off, and they're now licensing it. They announced it today, Monday. Their platform, and they're going industry wide with it. And it's a really interesting story. Laura Martin described it as a revenue stream that you'll be at a competitive disadvantage if you're not glommed onto it in the next 12 months. So
I think it's pretty interesting. Whereas I think the big guys can do it to sell the other ones, but I think they'll probably make more money because Lionsgate's been doing it for a while with Runway, I want to say. Again, it's somewhat smaller. They're the mini major. They're kind of sitting in the in between place, but definitely making some money off of this. But yeah, I think these are the kinds of things that let niche streamers survive. Speaking of niche streamers with new strategies, Fox Nation, which started as a companion site for Fox News hardcore fans who just couldn't get enough of hearing from.
I need to go online and
but as soon as they figured out what this online thing was, given the relative age of their audience, but they Fox Nation is still here. They pronounce themselves quite happy with Lachlan's quite happy. Supposedly, the PR people tell me. They won't tell me how many subs it has, how many subscribers it has, which they got coy, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It said some story wrote that it was like 2 million. It's more than that. And it's like, well, how much more? It's like, well, a little more. It's more than that, so it's a few million, maybe it's several million. Great, whatever it is. But this will make a difference. I think they're going to join Amazon Prime. I find it interesting because it's kind of been, and they've definitely evolved Fox Nation beyond its Fox News only stuff. It's still conservative friendly programming. Documentaries, like their new thing is a series about the Saints, and not the football team, but the Catholic ones. And a very famous director is handling it all. Marty is doing his thing. Of course, Scorsese. Yeah. I mean, I guess this is the opposite of all those movies he did about sinners. He's now doing one about the Saints, and he sold that to Fox Nation. He's a good Italian Catholic boy, I guess,
I'm picturing sort of voice narration like Goodfellas.
Yeah, right. Well, some of those saints were problematic before they got saintly. So maybe he'll kind of go there, it's like, you talking to me? You talking to me?
Joe Pesci.
I got Jesus on my side. I'll take you down so fast. What, you think funny? And you think I'm funny? Funny how? Like funny strange? Funny haha?
Yes, I've been doing it. I love Scorsese.
Yeah, but it's interesting. So he's got it, and they've got another a series of other. I think Kevin Costner did a series about Yellowstone, not the show, but the actual park and the stuff around the park. Kind of interesting, given his identification now with the Taylor Sheridan story. So things like that. They're doing things like that. So fine, they're they're broadening their idea of what they can do. Fantastic. But now they're going to be on Amazon Prime, and I think that's interesting because this comes 6 months after the launch. They're about 6 months after the launch of Fox One, which was pulling together the best of Fox Sports, Fox News, and Fox Business. And so you can stream both of these in a bundle for about $25 a month, which feels a little rich to me. What do you think?
I'm not their consumer. It does feel
Right.
rich. I think if you get your sports with it and stuff, and it's
Yeah, you
designed
get sports, you get NFL.
not paying for pay TV because it's designed. It's the niche property designed for
Yeah.
the cord nevers and cord cutters.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, they don't wanna eat in they actually don't wanna eat into their cord users. They don't wanna make them cut. So maybe that's part of the idea behind the pricing. Make it steep enough that it's not a bargain if you're already getting it through cable. But if you aren't, hey, here's an option to do that. And you can, again, it's a bundle. By itself, it's $9 a month, which really feels steep to me. But
right?
what's it worth to you?
Just a
The
ammunition.
question we're asking today is, what's it worth to you?
Or doing
David Ellison.
Fort Jack Daniels. How much is that? There was a time. It was 5 years ago. This is when Warner Media was launching HBO Max. The first time it was called HBO Max. And there was talk about disaggregation and avoiding Amazon and channels and all the revenue share that entails.
Right.
That effort went nowhere. I mean, the industry bows down.
I remember that. That was a boneheaded move among many in the last 5 or 6 years of Warner Brothers' existence, man. So many missteps. So many missteps. But the other thing that was interesting, I thought, Apple's podcasts app. Podcasts got their name from the Apple iPod. And so they've had this podcast app forever. Now they're going to finally have video. And you can have it with video or without, but it's going to have video. So people that have been going on Apple Podcasts without our beautiful faces now can see us. So there's that. But I think it's interesting because now they're finally competing with YouTube a little bit in this area, and Spotify, which they've been competing on the music side for a long time. Spotify moved hard into podcasts, including video podcasts they control over the
So many
last
people I talk
year.
to watch video podcasts on connected TV now.
Yeah.
A lot of people watch the financial ones. We should branch into that. Give the world our stock picks.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to go bankrupt out there.
How fast do you want to lose your money? I have some ideas. Here's where you can go. Meanwhile,
So I want
back
to
at the
talk
rant.
about a subject you brought up last week. What's it called? Bike dance, not bike dance. Free dance.
It's ByteDance. Yeah,
Bike
ByteDance and Seed.
Speed Dance.
ByteDance is the parent company. It's a gigantic game company.
Right, but they have a new generative AI platform called Cdance that
Yeah.
all the major studios plus Netflix sent cease and desist letters.
Actually, I misspoke. It's not a game company. It's a social media company, but it has it was TikTok's owner in the US, and now it's not. But everywhere else in the world, except I think it's banned in India. So two big markets, it's not. But otherwise, it's got TikTok and the TikTok equivalent in China, Douyin, and I'm sure I butchered that, along with Keevil. But, they got a bunch of stuff. But Seed Dance came out 2.0 and Hollywood freaked, right?
Well, Hernan Lopez and Allen Company, that's his research outfit, put out an interesting graphic about OpenAI Sora, another Gen AI platform that was a lot of similar papers said a year ago about it. And the growth arc for its user acquisition sort of plateaus once.
Yeah, it's a little more concave instead of convex.
It stopped growing nearly as fast once it's deprived of IP. It had to shift to a voluntary opt-in model as opposed to a forced opt-in one.
It's not a hockey stick, it's a knocky stick. Speaking of which, congrats to the men's and women's U.S. hockey teams for thrilling overtime victories over their rivals, Canada. Those were extraordinary games, particularly that golden goal from Megan Keller. And the women's side is just, oh my God, that was a heck of a play. But both of them, I mean, it's funny, they both play. And I have a lot of lovely people I know in Canada or from Canada. And I'm sorry, because I suspect there'll be some annoying stuff coming out of DC about all this. But congrats to the men's and women's hockey teams. Fantastic games against fantastic competition. Someone had to win, and they did. They pulled it out. So anyway.
Yeah, it's getting to be kind of a bitter rivalry between the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah, both on the men's and women's sides. It's really interesting to see some of that. That said, we are finally seeing, hey, Dan, we are finally seeing the end of legendary February for NBC Universal. So they had the Winter Olympics for 2+ weeks. They had
Good niche program.
Super Bowl, and they had the NBA All-Star Game in this little window of time. And the Olympic stuff was racking up records. Super Bowl, I think, was second all time in total viewership. Who knows what the All-Star Game? It had a fun new format. I don't remember seeing the stats on viewership.
It was a 4-team series.
3-team round robin.
Right. They had like the European stars like Doncic and Joker.
Yeah, it was loaded. That Euro team was, well, world team. It wasn't just Euro stars, but that world team was pretty loaded, let me just say. And that was even with a couple of their superstars sitting it out, just wearing the jersey but not playing. But a fun new way to do it and to acknowledge the international component of the NBA. But to me, the bigger thing is NBC Universal is going to have a heck of a February, right? They're going to own sweeps. Now we can go back to not watching Peacock again, except maybe some NBA games. I mean, how do they build on this? I think that's the thing that's interesting to me. How do they build on this?
Well, I mean, they have, just look at the rights portfolio. They have the NBA and they have a round of playoffs. Yeah. I have to look at their postseason. The NBA always heats up this time of year.
What sort of heats up, because really March Madness kind of takes over the basketball conversation, the college level game with the conference tournaments, and then going into March Madness, and that eats up a lot of the basketball bandwidth. But they come out of that, April's the real big push, and then they go into playoffs and all that. And playoffs last for 3 freaking months, I think, 2.5 months. But I mean, beyond sports, though, they don't have a lot of stuff you want to watch that's not sports. They got some great sports stuff, but what else? How do you make Peacock matter? Do they need to just go ahead and buy Paramount?
Like The Pit, like HBO Max. They don't have like Landman, like Tyler Sheridan stuff. They don't have like signature shows represent the brand.
Shows that would have been on broadcast TV and giant top 10 hits in 1998 for the broadcast networks. The Pit is clearly that, with a little more gore than they would allow in there. But you're right. I mean, those kinds of shows and Landman, again, some more cursing, but other than the cursing and some of the somewhat risque banter, I mean, those are absolutely shows that could run on network otherwise.
There are smart people who cover the broadcast networks at the trades who would know this better than me. But I've wondered, if you look at their Peacock's programming strategy, it's shared smartly with NBC. The leading edge is the network, and then they let into next day you watch it on Peacock. It's a different game, a different audience, different standards being on broadcast. And I don't know if that's led to them to, like The Pit was designed for.
Yeah, so they could, that's custom built for that. It's ER for the streaming era. But you're right. Otherwise, what they're doing is just retrofitting and reusing and saving money on their content costs by maximizing, Saturday Night Live runs a little bit afterward. You can get the SNL stuff and the clips like you're already getting them on YouTube. Like what's it going to be? So I find that interesting in terms of where they go. Meanwhile, speaking of sports opportunities, Major League Soccer opened this weekend. We will never get ratings from Nielsen about Apple TV, but Major League Soccer had a heck of a opening match between Los Angeles Football Club, LAFC, and Inter Miami, with Son Heung-min and other folks with LAFC. He's one of the biggest stars, Korean, and I butchered his name, and I apologize to him and his entire ancestry. But against Lionel Messi, whose name I did not butcher, and several other stars. These are the two favorites to win the Major League Soccer title this year. They have a new deal where you don't need to have a separate subscription to watch the game on, as long as you have an Apple TV subscription. 75,000 people, the most for an opening day game. The biggest soccer crowd in the world yesterday was watching that game, which was held not in BMO Stadium, south of USC and downtown, but next door in the LA Memorial Coliseum, which seats 90-ish thousand. So they had a pretty good turnout. Whatever the ratings are, they had a pretty good turnout. And that's a good sign for them to start in a year when World Cup is coming to North America. At least half a dozen games will be in Los Angeles, but over at SoFi.
That stadium, decades past, it was built for the 32 Olympics. And at one point, it seated over 100,000 people, but it's been
101, I think.
Now, if you get 75,000 people in there, it's packed. That's a lot of that's
It's a lot of
spanning.
fun. I think the technical is, I seem to recall, like 93. What's really going to be cool is, so to get the fans closer in, they got rid of the track, where
Right.
from the Olympic days in both 84 and in 32. They got rid of the track and they dropped the floor of the playing field and built stands down to that so that the fans are more on top
Oh, well,
of
you
the
must see
game.
man they don't own it, but they're now the leaseholder and they have like
Yeah,
rights
they got and they put 100 million into it and all that. But for the Olympics in 2 years, they're going to build a fake lid over that dropped floor
with the track.
and have the track, so they can do the track still in that historic place. It's already hosted. It's the only place that's hosted one, technically 2 Olympics, a World Series, and a Super Bowl. And now it'll get its 3rd Olympics games. So it's kind of cool.
That is
But
cool.
but they got to build up. They're going to have a fake running surface like 30 feet up. Kind of wild.
Before we
So,
get out of here, I don't know if you, this is a late inclusion from me. I saw that OpenAI Sam Altman went to India
mm,
last week and spoke in a keynote. And it was asked about power consumption and AI. All these guys get asked about that's the big,
yeah,
future.
it's a big deal.
How's that going to work? He said it is a problem, but if you look at humans, they need to be fed for 20 years and need to be trained before they're smart enough to work. That just seemed like the damnedest thing. But the real energy and the most posted videos from that session was at one point, all of the technologists were at the conference, and this includes Altman's rival, Anthropic's Dario Amodei. He's sitting
Yeah.
sitting right next to him. They all get up and they're told to hold hands. And everybody's holding hands. It's like 40 people, except for Amadei and Altman. They're like looking at each other. Are you gonna do it? I'm not gonna do it. You gonna do it?
That's an awkward moment for those two probably not socially super adept fellows. Super
Oh,
brilliant, but maybe not so good on the social component thing, just guessing. So having those guys like touch, oh my God.
yeah.
I'll have my AI agent get in touch with your AI agent. How's that?
If you like your tech gods small and petty, here they are.
Yeah. Speaking of things that are kind of getting out of touch, Xbox, Phil Spencer, who headed Xbox for a dozen years,
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of the patron saint of Xbox going way back. I think he was there from the start, but he's got, he's definitely been important to keep Xbox kind of focused on the main chance. And they bought Activision, they bought Bethesda Softworks. They are the biggest publisher of games, I think, in the world now, no matter what they say in China.
But an
But the
influential
Xbox
games
itself,
blog declared him dead.
yeah, but the Xbox, we don't know what's going to happen because now you can play Xbox games through the Xbox app
Well, the
on
console, yeah.
without a console. You can play it on a TV, sufficiently well-powered smart TVs from LG, Samsung, and Amazon. So that's just now. All you need is the controller you would get. You just pair it up and boom, you can go and play Fallout or you can play Halo. Halo itself was the franchise that saved the initial Xbox. It was the reason to buy an Xbox 25 years ago. There wasn't anything else. Sony was kicking its ass, but they had Halo. And so that kept Xbox going on this big swing Microsoft took way back when.
It's funny we're getting rid of everything and trying to organize our storage. My wife and I. And one of the crates we're taking to donation, electronics donation, is one with 2 Xbox consoles and a PlayStation 3. It was fitting that you wrote about that reorganization at Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Netflix told its PlayStation 3 users, find some other way to stream
Yeah.
our
Because
service.
we're not helping you anymore.
Yeah.
It's time. It's been like 15 years since the PS3 mattered. It's time. Let it go. Move on. The woman who's taking over at Xbox used to be AI executive at Meta and then at Microsoft. And now she's heading Xbox and like all the game creators are like, oh my God, are we just going to get overwhelmed by AI? And she's like, no, 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 no soulless AI slop. I will defend us from soulless AI slop. But we will use AI tools to make games faster, less expensively, smarter, better. Okay,
Right.
well, that's conceivably true, but given that she's coming from that space, it tells you there's a different mindset. And good luck with her. Sony, by the way, which has kind of owned the console, that part of the console space. We won't get into Nintendo; it's its own universe. Sony went on this buying spree of all these development studios, 11 of them over about a 6-year period. Already has closed 3 and gotten virtually nothing out of the remaining 8. I mean, it's That's money for nothing, you
Yeah,
know?
for GM and sports, that's a lot of bad drafts get you fired.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see if Paramount's deal does better should they actually pull this thing out. Let's see if they get something for all the money they want to spend and all the debt they want to lay up. I think with that, we probably ought to wrap this up, Daniel. I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT and Next TMT Talks here with Daniel Frankel. You can like, share, subscribe, follow, love us, comment upon us gently, please. Here you can
Pound the
go.
subscribe, pound that like button.
You can get the newsletter for free in your mailbox every week to start your Mondays with humor, perspective, and a little bit of snark by going to Next TM as in media. TMT, nexttmt.com. Sign up. We will send it to you. And please join us. And also go to YouTube if you want us in person on your screen, or you can get us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or elsewhere if you want to hear. And I guess now with Apple Podcasts change soon, you'll be able to see our faces there too. So thank you everybody for everything. And this is David Bloom with Daniel Frankel, over and out.